Today we will be considering chapters 4 through 7 of Tacitus Agricola. So I will switch to the document itself, and from now on you will just see the text. So Gaius Julius Agricola, vetera et illustri Iulo foro Juliensum colonia ortus, ulterque auem procurationem Caesarem habuit, quae equestris nobilitas est. So we begin simply with Agricola's name, as Tacitus begins his stately and formal biography of his father-in-law. So Gaius Julius Agricola, born in the old and illustrious colony of the inhabitants of the Forum of Julius. So this was a colony that deserved to be called both old and illustrious because it had actually been founded by Julius Caesar himself in approximately the year 49, I believe, and in 46 BC it was founded. So he was born there, and utrumque, both of his grandfathers held procuratorem, were procurators under the Caesars. So the two Caesars mentioned here are considered to have been both Augustus and Tiberius. Okay, so they held office beneath the Caesars, and which office was quae equestris nobilitas est, which office was a great position of splendor or nobility for a person of equestrian rank. Quae equestris nobilitas est. Okay, pater illi, Julius Graecinus, senatori ordinis, studio eloquentiae sapientiae quae notus, iisque ipsis virtutibus iram Gai Caesaris meritus. So the father to him, that is to Agricola, Julius Graecinus of the senatorial order, was known for his zeal for both eloquence and wisdom, and on account of these same virtues, he incurred the wrath of Gaius Caesar. That would be the Emperor Gaius Caligula. Namque, for Marcum Silanum accusare iussus et, quia abnuerant interfectus est. For he was murdered, having been ordered to accuse Marcus Silanus, and because he refused to do that, he was murdered. So Tacitus explains simply that the father of Agricola would not be a tool of prosecution for the Emperor Caligula, and therefore he himself was killed. He switches now to tell us about Agricola's mother. Mater Julia Porcilla fuit, rarae castitatis. Now, very short and straightforward sentence to establish the virtue of Agricola's mother. His mother was Julia Porcilla, rarae castitatis, disjunctive of character or quality, a woman of rare uprightness. In vius senu indulgentiaque educatus, per omnem honestarum artium cultum, pueritiam adolescentiamque transigit. So it is often a difficulty with Tacitus is to separate accusatives that he will place right next to each other, but that belong in different parts of the construction. So we see here that this sentence breaks down into basically three different limbs or joints. In huius, and the huius refers backwards to Julia Porculi, his mother. In huius senu indulgentiaque educatus, having been reared in the lap and indulgence of her, he passed both his boyhood and his adolescence, pueritiam adolescentiamque per omnem honestarum artium cultum. Okay, we could say he passed them under the direction of a complete educational framework consisting of honestarum artium, the pursuits and topics and skills that befitted one of his class. Okay. So arcebat eum ab in lecebris peccantium praeter ipsius bonam integramque naturam quod statum parvulus et maiorum Massiliam habuit, locum Graeca comitate et provinciali parsimonia mixtum et bene compositum. Okay, so it's very often that Roman young men had many enticements to go rather wayward in their adolescence. So we are told here that arcebat eum, the arcebat eum ab in lecebris peccantium. The subject's a little hard to find here. Is actually this whole clause here. The fact that, quod statum parvulus sedem ac magistratam studiorum Massiliam habuit. Okay, the fact that immediately from his earliest age, he had Massilia as the seat and as a teacher of his studies. And Massilia refers to the town of Marseille, where he would have received his earliest education. In a manner that's typical of Tacitus, he renders the notions of the sentence complex by saying that beyond his own good nature and integrity, praeter ipsius bonam integramque naturam, okay, it protected him or held him back from the enticements of wicked persons. And this peccantium, this genitive plural, is definitely masculine. From the enticements of wicked persons, arcebat eum, he was protected, okay, beyond his own good nature and integrity by the fact that he had grown up in Marseille, and then in his typical positive style, Tacitus describes Marsilia as locum mixtum ac bene compositum, a place mixed and well composed of both the civilization and culture of Greece, but at the same time, or courtesy, Greek courtesy and provincial parsimonia, or we might I'll just go over that sentence one more time. Arcebat eum ab in lecebris peccantium, praeter ipsius bonam integram quae naturam, quod statum parvulus, sedem, ac magistram studiorum, Marsiliam habuit, locum Graeca comitate et provinciali parsimonia mixtum ac bene compositum. So the trick here again, in a sense, is to separate this one accusative. So he had X for Y. He had Marsilium as the seat and teacher, a director of his pursuits. Okay. So Memoria Teneo, and now Tacitus gives a personal reminiscence. Memoria Teneo, I have in memory that he, solutum ipse narrare, that he himself, Agricola, solitum, was accustomed to narrate that he, say, prima inuenta studium philosophiae acrius, ultracam concessum Romano ac senatori hausisse, ni prudentia matris incensum ac flagrantem animum coercuisset. So this is a contrary to fact condition loaded in a indirect statement. So he himself used to narrate that he would have drinking, would have imbibed a little too zealously or sharply in his early age, the study of philosophy. And then we get this appositional, what does it mean to indulge or to, literally, hausisse is to, chug, to drink deeply and violently from some source, okay? He would have imbibed it too enthusiastically, and ultracam concessum Romano ac senatori, in a fashion more enthusiastic, beyond which concessum is granted to a Roman ac senatori, to a Roman of the senatorial class. Okay, this is referred to as a hendiades, where you have two nouns that actually amount to a noun and an adjective. So beyond what was granted to a Roman and a senator, okay, boils down to beyond what ultra prom concessum to a Roman of the senatorial class. Okay, so he would have drinking in his early youth more fervently from the stream of philosophy. Ni prudentia matris incensum ac flagrantem animum coercisset, lest the prudence of his mother had restrained his heart, inflamed and a fire, okay, incensum ac flagrantem, i.e., that is for philosophy. Scilicet, sublime, and then so now Tacitus, having reported his mother's intervention, or Agricola's mother's intervention, now accounts for the fact that, or gives an account of how this nevertheless didn't influence the rest of his life, Agricola's life, his early flirtation with philosophy. Scilicet sublime et erectum ingenium. So Scilicet has a wide range of senses, but here it's kind of the enthusiastic, no doubt. There's no doubt that sublime and upright nature, okay, apetebant, was seeking more vehemently than cautiously, vehementius quam caute, okay, the beauty and shine of a great and excessively high glory, and pulchritudinem expeciam are typical ways of describing the appeal of the philosophical life. Magni excelsi que gloria. So we have a pretty straightforward two accusatives, further modified by a string of genitives. Okay, the beauty and shine or enticing appearance of a high, of great and excessive glory. Okay, but here we get the conclusion or the wrap up, which will be important, which provides an important motif for what we'll see going forward. Mox mitigavit ratio et aetas, retenuitque quod est difficilium ex sapientia modem. Okay, but soon ratio et aetas, okay, good sense and age mitigavit, it mitigated, it shut down his excessive love of philosophy. Retenuitque, and here the que is really adversative, but he retained ex sapientia modum. He retained from his love of philosophy a sense, a more general and practical sense of modum, moderation. Okay, and he says, gives a little appositional comment, quod est difficilium, which is very difficult to do, so the youthful appeal that Agricola felt for philosophy, nevertheless, in the long run, did enable him to carry into his political and military service a sense of moderation that allowed him to proceed, as we shall see, in dangerous times. So I'm going to back up and just simply read the Latin of that, of the whole, of this whole chapter 4 for us, so we can just see it all working together. Okay, Gnaeus Julius Agricola, vetera et illustri foro Juliensium colonna ortus, ultimque avam procuratorem Caesarem habuit, quae equestris nobilitas est. Pater ili Julius Ricinus, senatori ordinis, studio eloquentiae sapientiae que notus, iisque ipsis virtutibus iram Gaii Caesaris meritus. Namque Marcum servanum accusare usus, et quia abnuerant interfectus est. Mater Julia Porcila fuit, rarai castitatis, in huius sinu indulgentiaque educatus, per omnem honestarum artium cultum, pueritiam adolescentiamque transegit. Arcebat eum ab in legibris peccantium, praeter ipsius bonam integramque naturam, quod statim parvulus, sedem ac magistram studiorum Massiliam habuit, locum Graeca comitate et provinciali parsimoniae mixtum ac bene compositum. Memoria teneo solitum ipsum nerare, se prima innuenta studium philosophiae acrius, otra quam concessum Romano ac senatori halsise, ni prudentia matris incensum ac flagrantem animum coequisset. Scilicet sublime et erectum ingenium, pulchritudinem ac specium magnae et celsaeque gloriae, vehementius quam caute appetebat, mox mitigavit ratio et aetas, retenuitque quod est difficilium ex sapientia modum. So, chapter 5 goes on to present the beginning, the first parts of Agricola's military life, and that occurred in Britain. So he would begin his training in Britain as he would fulfill as an adult his the most glorious acts of his own military career as the commander in Britain. So, prima castrorum rudimenta in Britannia, Suetonio Paulino diligentiat moderato duci approbavit, electus quem contubernio aestimaret. Now I've inserted in these square brackets some additional items that help you understand the end of this, the final bit of this. But the first is actually pretty straightforward if you realize that. Let's make a line here. So ad probavit, okay? Ad probavit expresses the subject that will be, as we'll see from here on in, the subject in most of the sentences of the Agricola is to be supplied as Agricola himself. So Agricola himself, he won approval, and then the odd here, the odd is what triggers these datives. Suetonio Paulino diligentia et moderatio duci. And perhaps I want to keep the in Britannia. That actually is too short to constitute a limb by itself. So, he won approval. Okay, now I'm getting a little mixed up by what I want to do with prima castrorum rudimenta in Britannia. And I would actually like that to be the subject of ad probavit, almost like his first rudiments, his first experience of camp in Britain won the approval. But the problem there is that, unlike Greek, Latin does not allow Latin does not allow neuter accusative subjects to take a singular object. So, so suddenly I'm a little confused by how that first part's working. But straight enough, it's clear enough what's going on. Prima castorum rudimenta in Britannia. Suetonio Paulino diligenti et moderati duci approbavit. Okay. So I'm just going to go with the singular, going with prima rudimenta, even though that's not supposed to be able to happen. So his first attempts castrorum in an army camp, his first exposure to an army camp in Britain, won the approval or were approved in the eyes of Suetonius Paulinus, his commander, and diligenti ac moderato duci. So here again, a diligent and moderate commander. So this notion of modus is going to be a complement that will follow, ring again and again through our text. Electus, and here the electus has referred to Agricola, and he was chosen, and here I've said it, as one who Suetonius judged to be worthy of contubernio, which means basically a position on the general staff, position on the general staff itself. So we'll see that in this first sentence, what Tacitus actually gives us is quite without the added elements. It's the switch between the subject of electus and the subject of aestimaret, the subject of electus being Agricola, but the subject of aestimaret being Suetonius is a little bit abrupt. And this quem aestimaret is a subjunctive of characteristic, a relative clause of characteristic. So he was chosen as as the sort of person whom Suetonius thought worthy of a position on the general staff. Because we have to remember that these young men who had political connections would come from Rome, or in Agricola's case, from an established province, and serve in armies where, as we'll see in the next sentence, their behavior was often, more often than not, far from exemplary. The famous tale from from Julius Caesar's campaign against Ariovistus and the Germans comes into play here, and people will remember, who are familiar with that account, that when Caesar faced a near mutiny from his troops, who were hearing from the merchants and such and locals of how physically huge and formidable were the German troops. Roman troops had never faced German troops before that campaign of Julius Caesar. It was essentially these young privileged men who'd come up from Rome, who Caesar had taken into the army so they could just do their due in order to advance up the political ladder. It was essentially these persons who panicked first, and where the fear and evolving panic originally took root. So the idea here in this first sentence is that Agricola, and in the rest of this chapter as well, that Agricola immediately put a clear distance between himself and these more careless types, and won the approval of his commander, and was actually brought onto the general staff as someone who showed great possibility. So, and this is what Tacitus will explain to us in the rest of this chapter. Okay, so, And here it's important to, the next sentence, nec agricola, it's important to realize we have this nec. Okay, so neither nor, and then that's going to, the neither nor is going to coordinate two connected adverbial clauses. So nec licenter, nec segniter. Okay, so agricola, neither in a licenter, I mean just licentious, but we really just want carefree, do what you want. Neither did Agricola in a carefree manner. More juventum qui militiam in lasciviam vertunt. Okay, neque segniter ad voluptates et comiatus titulum tribunatus et inscitiam retulit. Okay, so this is a rather complex little bit, and we'll see exactly why it's so complex, because it's complex and almost wanton itself in its grammatical formation compared to what follows, as we'll see in a second. So you get neither licentiously, and then he gives you this apposition, beginning with this ablative of matter. More juventum, in the style, in the manner, in the fashion of young men who, okay, vertunt militiam in lasciviam, who turn their militiam, their military service, into just opportunity to party, okay, like a lot of young folks going off to college these days and in days before. But so neither licentiously in the matter of youth who turn their camp time into one long party, nor in segniter, and segniter means just like lazy and again just like blowing things off. Ad voluptates et comiatus, and retulit goes with the ad, nor did he, retulit ad means to turn X into a means towards Y. So nor did he turn his titulum, his title or rank of a tribune, and that is, and this is a genitive, his rank of tribune and his inscitiam, his own lack of knowledge, nor did he turn that into a launching pad for seeking after pleasure and comiatus. Comiatus is really the request for leave. So let's just look at this whole thing. And then this is a nice little combination here. Titulam et inscitiam tribunatus. The idea here is, well, I'm just a tribune. I'm just a tribune. I don't know anything. Don't ask me. Don't expect me to do anything. So it's this title and almost right to be stupid because you're new in camp and don't really know anything. He didn't use those as an escape, as a means to escape into pleasure or leaves. And likewise, he didn't turn his, almost redundantly, he didn't turn his military service into just an excuse to party. So we have this rather, complex little bit here that says what he didn't do, which is followed by a very disciplined bit that says what he did do. So it's almost like the style of these two clauses, as we'll see, are themselves in contrast and reflect the two types of life. On the one hand, the life of pleasure that Agricola refused. On the other hand, the life of toil and responsibility that he embraced. So, nec Agricola licenter more juvenum qui militiam in lasciviam vertunt, neque segniter ad voluptates et comiatus titulum tribunatus et inscitiam retulit, said, noscere provinciam, nosci exercitui, discere a peritis, sequi optimus, nihil ad petera injactationem, nihil ob formidinem recusare, simulque et anxius et intentus agere. Okay? So as opposed to, like I showed you, this very complex and again, almost just carefree and just very lascivious construction here, we get in the second part a rather taunt and almost militaristic sequence of historical infinitives. Noscere provinciam, nosci exercitui, discere e peritus, sequi optimos, etc. Okay? So instead of just turning his military service into Party City, he sought noscere provinciam, to get to know the province, nosci exercitu, to be known by the army. So in this nice little contrast of using the same infinitive, but in one case active, the other passive, he got to know the province, and he got to be known to the army. Okay. He discere a peritis. He learned from persons who were experienced. Sequi optimos. He followed people who were the best at what they did. He imitated people who were the best. Part of him learning from those who know. Nihil, and then nihil. So this contrast of clauses begin with nihil. Nihil ad petera injactationem, nihil ob formidinem recusare. So he did not ad petera anything. Nothing did he seek injactationem for the purpose of boasting. He didn't seek some, glorious or some silly job that he could boast about, but that really amounted to nothing. Okay. Nihil ob formidinem recusare. He didn't refuse anything on account of fear. So he was both fearless and humble. He wasn't seeking just empty things to boast about. And simulque et anxius et intentus agere. So agere is just a general Roman word for just doing things, the way you conduct yourself. So, and simultaneously, both anxious et intentus. He was both, and anxious here is not our anxiety, but he was just careful, the way a general or a military person just keeps his wits about him, and has a proper respect for the dangers of the task. So he was anxious and intentus. So these nice little system, like I say, of historical infinitives is a very nice contrast with the first part. He didn't do this, but he did just carry on in this disciplined and boom, boom, boom fashion, like a good military man should. Okay. So now Tacitus switches from Agricola to the circumstances in which this attitude was formed and displayed. And he'll come back to Agricola after having set the stage that this was just not a do-nothing province, but actually was one full of challenges and difficulties, as a matter of fact. So non sane alias exercitatior magisque in ambiguo Britannia fuit. Okay. Hold on for a second. I have to press something. This is the text of the Agricola off of the Latin library site, and I just think that just want to make sure that something isn't missing. Oh no, there's nothing missing. Okay. Okay. Non sane alias exercitior. Okay. So alias here is at any other time. So and Britannia is our subject. So Britannia was at no other time more exercitatior, more of a task-ridden situation, or magisque in ambiguo, and more in the balance, hanging in the balance. Okay, at no other time was Britain more in the balance, or more beset with difficulties than at that time when Agricola began his service under Suetonius. Okay, so here we get a series of short little limbs. Trucidati, making the point. Trucidati, veterani, incensai coloniae, intercepti exercitus, tum de salute mox de victoria certavera. Okay, so it was a difficult situation. Trucidati veterani, okay, soldiers had been killed. Incensai coloniae, colonies had been burned. Intercepti exercitus, armies had been cut off and surrounded. Okay, and then he sums up by saying, tum at first, mox thereafter, tum de salute, mox de victoria, certavera. Okay, at first, certavera, they struggled simply for safety, but soon thereafter, their struggles were de victoria. So he's commenting on the general course of what Suetonius had to deal with in Britain at this time, okay, and describing the bad situation that the Roman forces were extracted from under the Suetonius leadership. So it says, quae cuncta etsi conciliis ductuque alterius agebatur. Okay, so all of which things, although agebantur, they were carried forward under the counsel, under the plans, under the planning and leadership of another, alterius, genitive, of another, okay? Although all these things were carried out under the leadership and plans of another person, ac summa rerum et recuperatae provincia gloria inducam cessit. And even though the glory went to the general Suetonius, what glory was that? Okay, I'm sorry. Summa rerum et okay, and even though the most important matters and the glory at the province being recovered, the glory of the province being recovered from this shattered and dangerous situation went to the general, okay? So that's all our concessive clause. Nevertheless, okay, artem et usum et stimulos adedere juveni, okay? So nevertheless, all these things, quae cuncta, we almost have to supply, they added, adederent, to the young man, okay, both knowledge and experience and motivation. Intravitque animum militaris gloria cupido. And cupido, the desire for military glory, the desire of military glory, intravitque animum, entered his heart. Okay? And then now, since we're approaching the end, in kind of typical fashion, Tacitus takes us back into the bigger picture of just what it was like to be beginning your military political career under these bad emperors. He says that this Cupido Gloriae, which in earlier times, imagine the Middle Republic, there could be nothing better that a young person can have. But he says, you know, he gives this appositional phrase at the end, ingrata, you know, a thankless thing, temporibus quibus, in times during which, and so I should say, an ungrateful, a thankless, you know, attribute in times during which sinestra erga eminentis interpretatio nec minus periculum ex magna fama quam mala, and then I supply just the verb fuit because Cicero does, I mean, Tacitus himself does not supply it. So this is a little tricky. So let's break it up and not forget that it is just that does hang together, but you have to realize that this is a kind of what I call one of these sandwiches where you have sinistra interpretatio modifies interpretatio, you know, nominative singulars. So, you know, a wicked interpretation in the face of erga with regard to eminentes, with regard to people who were extraordinary, okay? Fuit was no less danger. Okay, I'm getting confused by my own little segments, so let me just put it all back together and it'll make perfect sense. Quibus sinestra erga eminentes interpretatio nec minus periculum ex magna fama quam ex quam ex mala. So times in which there was not less danger. So times in which a sinister interpretation, and let's just say of eminent persons, was no less danger if it came on the basis of great deeds or if it came on the basis of if it came on the basis of bad deeds. So whether you were, you know, you were just as likely to be condemned under these bad emperors for serving well as for serving badly. And this is his point, to establish this fact that these are times when a man, even of virtue, has to walk on eggshells. And it's very important that they have that moderation that will be Agricola's hallmark, as we'll see as we move forward. So I'll reread this whole thing for us. Prima castrorum rudimenta in Britannia, Suetonio Paulino diligentiat moderato duci ad probavit, electus quem contubernio aestimaret. Nec Agricola licenter more juvenum qui militiam in lasciviam vertunt, neque segniter ad voluptates et comiatus, titulum tribunatus et inscitiam retulit, sed noscere provinciam, nosci exercitui, discere aperitis, sequi optimos, nihil ad pedere injactationem, nihil ob formidinem recusare, simulque exius et intentus agere. Non sane alius exercitatior magisque in ambiguo Britannia fuit, trucidati veterani in censae coloniae, intercepti exercitus, tum de salute, mox de victoria quae tavera. Quaecunta et si conciliis ductuque alterius agebantur, ac summa rerum et recuperata provinciae gloria inducem cesset, artem et usum et stimulos adidere juveni, intravitque animum militaris gloriae cupido. Ingrata temporibus quibus sinistra erga ementis interpretatio nec minus periculum ex magna fama quam ex mala. Okay. So moving to, and I had this little bit from Gildersleeve's, but it's not really showing up clearly here. But if you're interested in the sense in which I earlier I supplied here the explanatory piece, okay, and in order to have an antecedent for the quim of the relative clause. Then if you're interested in the way I was construing that, you can take a look at Gildersleeve section 557, and in particularly the note number 1 at the bottom. Okay, however that may be, it gets a little easier here in chapter 6 as he begins to just present Agricola's early military career. Okay, wink, and by wink he means thereafter, after he left Britain, ad capes sendos magistratus in urbem degressus. Okay, having gone down into the city, ad capes sendos magistratus. Okay, to begin his political life. Okay, for the purpose of seeking elected positions. And this is a very common just use of ad with the gerundive after a verb of motion, just saying why you went to a certain place. You went into the city for the purpose of. So having gone to the city for the purpose of seeking magistrates, okay, and then he switches, and this is Agricola, during that time when he first returned from his first military service, he took a wife, Domititiam de Cidianum, splendidis natalibus ortam sibi junxit. So he joined to himself Domitia de Cidiana, who was ortam splendidis natalibus, born from a splendid family. She was a trophy bride of sorts, but not in the modern sense, of course. Idque, now this id refers to the whole little bit above, and this, idque matrimonium, and this marriage, okay, fuit decus ac rubor. It was both a trophy, an ornament, and a source of strength, okay, for Natenti, the dative. It was both ornament and a source of strength for him who was seeking ad maiora, who was striving for greater things. So he married someone who was going to help his career, or her father's connections would help his career, etc., in her own rank in society. So idque matrimonium ad maiora netenti, for someone who was striving for ad maiora, for greater things. It was a decus ac rubor fuit. Okay, and then he spends a sentence talking about the quality of their marriage. Vixerenque mira concordia. Okay, those are ablatives of manner. They lived with a marvelous concord. Per mutuam caritatem et in vicem se anteponendum. Okay, by means of a mutual, love for one another, and by putting the other in front of themselves. In vicem se anteponendum. Oftentimes, you don't really need the say in this to say, in turn, by placing the one before the other, in placing their partner before themselves in vicem. Okay, but Tacitus adds the se to the in weekend. In weekend se, anteponendo, okay? And then we have this strange little addition, okay, which more or less serves the purpose of giving the larger share of credit to Domitia, okay? Nisi quote here has in the sense of, however, nevertheless, Nisi quote, except for the fact that, Nisi quote, except for the fact that in bona uxora tanto maiora laus quanto in mala plus copi sent. Okay, so except for the fact that in a good wife, there is that much more praise, as in mala, there is more of blame. Okay, so a good wife is, for that very reason, more praiseworthy, because a bad wife is such a cogent sense of blame. So Ogilvy says here, again, like I said, nisi quod means except that or only. And he says that the expression is often used to qualify something that has been stated. And he said here the implied thought is difficult to supply, but it appears to be that Domitia deserves more credit, since a good wife is a rarity and is therefore as praiseworthy as a bad wife is detestable. So this tanto quanto, so as much X as Y. Okay, so except for the fact that in a good wife, there is so much more loss, praise, or credit, as in a bad wife, there is more of blame. So Ogilvy cites a bit from Hesiod's Works and Days, line 346. The Greek is Pema kakos geton hoson tagatos meg oneron. Onear, okay? Pema kakos geton hoson tagatos meg onera. And that means, woe is a bad wife to the extent that a good wife is a great boon, okay, or a great blessing. So Tacitus is just throwing in this proverbial idea of how lucky a man is if he actually finds a good wife. Okay, so source quaestori, and he moves immediately to his career, to the result of his first election. So he won the quaestorship, but the source quaestor, after you won your electoral position in Rome, there'd be a lottery for what your job would actually be. So the lottery for the positions of the quaestors dated. It gave to Agricola provinciam Asiam and proconsul, and that's a correction from the text of the Latin Library to follow the text of Winterbottom in the OCT, but it gave him the province of Asia, gave him Asia as his province, and it gave him, just double checking the text here. Oh, okay, there. I knew I needed it. I'm accusative. And gave him as a proconsul Salvius Titianus. Okay, so what did he get? He's gonna go to Asia as a minor official, or secondary lieutenant to the province, to the leader, to governor, and so he got the province of Asia, and as proconsul, he got Silvius Titanium. Now, of course, all of Tacitus's readers would know who these people were, and they'd realize. So what he says next would make perfect sense. Quorum neutro corruptus est, of whom by neither was he corrupted. So, and then he goes on to explain, by neither of whom was Agricola corrupted. Okay. Quamquam et provincia dives et parata peccantibus, although both the province was rich and ready to hand for those who, would commit criminal acts. Okay, peccantibus, parata peccantibus, nice little, phrase there, parata peccantibus, ready for the pickings, we might say. And the proconsul in omnem avitatem pronus, Tacitus loves this, was like, pronus was inclined towards every act of greed that he could encounter, and quanta libet facilitate, with quanta libet, any compliance that you can imagine, redempturus asset, he was ready to purchase mutuam dissimulationem mali, mutual dissimulation of the evil that was done. So this is kind of what you have to just get used to with the Tacitus, these very loaded sentences, or even limbs of sentences. Okay, so we have the provincia having been described as ripe for the pickings, and the council as ready for every act of greed that might face him, and as well, remtiturus asset. He was. You have to realize this is a future participle, and he was ready to go by whatever, with smiles and handshakes and whatever he needed, quanta libet facilitate, to just follow the great tradition of sweeping your ill deeds under the mat. So ready for a RICO trial. Mutuam dissimulationem mali. Okay. So again, it's amazing just how much information Tacitus can crowd into one sentence, which allows him to switch subjects so quickly. Because if you see, just looking back, we see, his return to the city, he takes a wife, he describes the quality of the relationship, he describes his first office, he describes Asia, he describes his commander, and now he's going to switch to actus est ibi filia, in subsidium simul oxalacium non filium ate sublatum breviam esit. Okay, so actus est, and again, as always, or most often, the subject is Agricola. And Agricola was enriched or made greater there by a daughter. Okay, by a daughter. A daughter was born to him, and obviously his wife accompanied him on his as he went to his province. In subsidium simul oxalacium. Okay, and she was both a solus and subsidium, and an aid to him. The daughter was. And if you'd ask, how can an infant be an aid to a Roman climbing the political military ladder? Well, if you had children in Rome, the emperors had, because there were so many people who just wanted to live their carefree bachelor's lives, if you had children, you could actually apply for certain offices at an earlier age than you would have been able to if you were married but did not have children. So she was an aid to him in advancing his political career because he was able to apply for offices earlier. And she was also a solus, and then Nam will always give the reason. nam filium ante sublatum breviam misit. For a little while earlier, he had lost a misit, a son, ante sublatum. Okay, and sublatum refers to that ceremony where a Roman man would pick up a child, the infant, off the ground, and to recognize it as legitimate and take it into his care. So he had a young child who died not in childbirth, but thereafter. He just didn't survive to grow up. So non filium ante sublatum breviam misit. So this daughter is an emotional solace to him because he'd recently lost his son. So again, Tacitus is cramming all types of information in each of these sentences. Okay, and now we move on to the next year of his service. So, and this is a little tricky because it seems redundant, but next, inter quaesturum ac tribunatum plebis, and you have to really supply annum. Okay, to make this make sense. So it's saying there was a year between the time he served as a quaestor and the time he served as a tribune of the plebs. So that year in between, inter quaestarum et tribunatum plebis annum, okay, the year between, and ipsum etiam tribunatus annum, and even the year itself of his tribunate, when he was a tribune, a political tribune in Rome, quiete et otio transit. He passed in a quiet and leisurely fashion. Okay, naris, well knowing temporum sub Neronem, well aware of what the situation was under Nero. Okay, times during which quibus, temporum quibus, inertia pro sapienta fuit, where kind of like, just taking things a little easy, not making a show of oneself, was pro sapientia, was as good as, or basically amounted to, a form of wisdom. Okay. Okay, idem, likewise, okay, of his service as a praetor, and okay, so likewise, the style and silence of his praetorship, okay, nor enim jurisdicio obuenerat, and obuenerat is our technical term for, again, that source, the lottery that would determine what exactly your job was going to be, nor did judicial services, jurisdicio, nor did judicial services fall to him, nor was he allotted any judicial services. So, if you weren't in charge of the courts and actually involved with prosecuting people or such, you could keep your head pretty low. So Tacitus goes on to explain, ludos et inania honoris, medio rationis atque abudantia duxet. So Agricola conducted the games he had to put on, and the other, inania honoris, the inane, the empty matters of his office, he conducted them medio rationis atque ambudantia. So in a way that was right in the middle between financial, just financial thrift and abudantia, lavishness. I mean, you didn't want to be so cheap in putting on your games and stuff that people would complain, but you didn't also want to be so abundant, abudantiae, okay, that the emperor would might be jealous, okay, or think you were trying to show him up or contend with his own displays. So, whereas in the Republic, you just went all out and did everything that you could because there was really no one higher than you who was going to slap you down for putting on a really great show. Whereas, under Nero, you had to be a little more careful. You didn't want to attract his jealousy. So, Ludos et honoris, medio rationis atque abundantia. And here we have, like I say, just an ablative of manner modified by these two genitives, right in between of thrift and, abundance. Okay. Uti, so that, longe a luxuria ita famae propria. Okay. So that he was as far from, so while he was far from luxury, likewise, he was pretty close to famae, getting a good reputation. Okay. So, like I said again, because he didn't want to appear too luxurious, but he didn't want to get a reputation as being stingy. You just want to keep your head low and not attract attention at all. Okay. Tum electus a galba. So now here we've entered from Nero into the year of the four emperors, where Nero was where Nero exits the stage, and you have first Galba, and then we'll see how this develops. So Tum electus a Galba, Nero's succession, ad dona temporum recognoscenda, okay, diligentissima conquestione effecit, ne quies alterius sacrilegum res publicam quam Neronis censisit. Okay, so he was elected. Now, what was he chosen, or really just chosen? What was he chosen for? He was chosen, and here we have another nice gerundive. He was chosen ad for, how do I say this? He was chosen for to repair the loss, to do an accounting of what were the gifts that had been in the temples, because during Nero's fire at Rome, a lot of people had taken the opportunity just to grab stuff out of the temples. So he was to make a record of what was in the temples and then go around and collecting it to make sure it was returned. So he was elected to this job of recognoscenda dona templorum, okay, recovering and the temple donations that had disappeared. And then, he carried it out, effecit diligentissima conquestione. He carried, having been elected to this task, he made a most diligent investigation, and with the result that, okay, that the res publica, the state, was aware of the sacrilegum, the robberies of no one other than of Nero. And what this is just a very complex way of saying, well, not too complex, but it's just a way of saying that Nero himself, when he had stolen from the temples, he would immediately melt things down and just, launder them or get rid of them. So there was no way of recovering Nero's own sacrilegum, his own thefts from the temples. But as far as any minor thefts that had occurred besides Nero's, Agricola's work of recovery more or less made it so that those things were not even felt. So Ogilvy says of the censiset, okay, he says, the force of the pluperfect is that it was as though the state had never felt. It was as though the state had never felt the robberies of anyone else than Nero. Okay? So let me read Ogilvy's longer note about this commission. He said, this commission was given to Agricola while he was still praetor. After the fire, Nero had repaired the loss of works of art in Rome by the pillage of temples throughout the empire, which is the sacrilegium here referred to. But no restoration of this plunder took place, as the concluding words of the sentence show. It is clear, therefore, that Agricola was commissioned to inquire into other misappropriations of temple treasure by individuals during the fire or afterwards. Okay. In earlier times, we hear of a special board appointed just for this task, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I guess, I mean, I see it now that I just want to correct myself that, or maybe there was a, let's see if there was another reference to, yes, it was the commentary of Duane Reed Stewart, 1927, Stewart's commentary, 1927, that mentioned the fact that objects in gold and silver could be melted so that those losses could not be made good. But the general idea was, at least in Rome itself, Agricola did a good job at recovering the things that had been lost. So let's reread this whole chapter for ourselves. Vinc ad capecindos magistratus in urbem degressus, Domitiam decidianum, splendidis natalibus hortam, sibi junxit. Edque matrimoniam ad maiora netenti decus ad rubor fuit. Vixerentque mira concordia, per mutuam caritatem, et in vicem se anteponendo, nisi quod in bona uxore tanto maior laus, quanto in mala plus culpae est. Sois quaesturiae provinciam Asiam, pro consulem Salvium Titianum dedit, quorum neutro corruptus est, quamquam et provincia dives et parata peccantibus, et pro consul in omnem aviditatem pronus, quanta libet facilitate redempturis esset mutuam dissimulationem mali. Autus esse bifilia, in subsidium simulac solacium, non filium ante sublatum breviam miset. Mox inter quaesturam ac tribunatum plebis, atque ipsum etiam tribunatus anum, quaete et otio transiit, navis sub neurone temporum, quibus inertia pro sapientia fuit. Idem praeturae tenor et silentium, nec enim jurisdicio obvenerat, ludos et inania honoris, medio rationis atque abundantia duxit, uti longe a luxuria ita famae propria. Tum electus ad galba, ad dona templorum recognoscenda, diligentissima conquestione effecit, ne quius alterius sacrilegum res publica quam neuronus sensis. Okay. So we'll end with this next chapter, but this next chapter explains how a personal tragedy entered at this point Agricola's life, and we'll see, like I said earlier, we are in the year of 4 emperors, so we have Nero. We had, under the times of Nero, and then Galba, and then now we're going to get Otto, and finally Vespasian. Okay, so sequens annus, Guavi vonera animum domumque eos afflixit. So he as often he personifies the following year afflicted. Domum animum domumque eos, his heart and house with a grave wound. Okay. Nam classis or Ottoniana licenter vaga, dum intimilios Liguriae passes, hostiliter populatur, matrem agricola and praedii suis interfecit, praediaque ipsa et magnam patrimonia partem direpuet, quae causa caedis fuerat. Okay. So what was this grave wound that afflicted Agricola the following year? So the fleet of Ortho was wandering Kenter, they're just raging hell, okay? Raging, just going wherever they want. They're going wherever they want. Kenter, they're just going here, they're going there. Dum in timilos hostiliter populatur, while they were plundering in hostile fashion the Intimilians, the people who are live in Liguriae, which was we're talking southern, now southern France, where Agricola came from. Matrem Agricola and praedii suis interfecit. So the mother of Agricola in praedii suis interfecit, it killed, she was killed, the mother of Agricola in praedii suis, on her own property, in her own farm, on her own estate. Okay, and deripuit, and it stole, destroyed praediaque ipsa, the estate itself, and magnum partem patrimonii, and a great part of Agricola's inherited or to be inherited wealth was destroyed by this raging or these kind of sailors run amok. Okay, quae causa caedis fuerat. So this quae causa caedis fuerat, which had been the reason of the murder. We're just to make it clear that the soldiers didn't, or the sailors didn't, the marauding sailors didn't attack Agricola's family farm because they were out to kill his mother or anything. They were just trying to, plunder this and that. And obviously his mother got in the way one way or another and was killed inadvertently. Okay. So igiter, therefore, ad solemnia pietatis profectus Agricola. Okay, so therefore, having departed ad solemnia pietatis, his mother's probably already been buried, but he has to return to the farm just to pay the proper respects and this and that. Agricola, deprehensis. Agricola was surprised, deprehensis nuntio, by a report ad facti a Vespasiano imperii, that Vespasian himself was making a play for imperial, to be emperor. Okay, again, we're in the year of 4 emperors. Okay, oxtatum, and immediately in partes transgressus est. In partes, and of course it's accusative plural, in partes transgressus est. And so immediately he came over to Vespasian's side. Okay, because of course these things would happen and you just have to decide who you were with or who you were against. He doesn't give any motivation as to why actually Agricola sided with Vespasian, but just reports it as fact. Okay, initia principatus ac statum urbis Mucianus regebat, juvene ad modum Domitiano et ex paterna fortuna tantum licentiam usurpante. So he has to take him, and this is the mission, the future bad emperor who Agricola will serve in Britain under. But we're told that this guy, Mucianus would have been, excuse me for a second, Gaius Sicinius Mucianus, governor of Syria since AD 67, entered Rome at the end of the year, just after the death of Vitellius, who died on December 4th, who's, I guess, our second of the four emperors, excuse me, when the city was in a state of anarchy. He held no formal no formal position at the time, but was a powerful champion of Vespasian's interests. So this person, so the beginning of Vespasian's, reign as emperor, and control of the city, Mucianus, regebat, he was in charge of. And then we get this nice ablative absolute concerning Domitian. So Domitian, Juvene ad modo Domitiano, Domitian, still being a young man, he was 18, et ex paterna fortuna, out of his father's rank as becoming emperor, tantum licentiam usurpante. He just made it an excuse to usurpante licentiam, to be the party animal, to play the son of the emperor, and didn't really take any responsible role in actually consolidating or running the city at the time, but left it to this Mucianus. Okay. Is misum, and here this is has to refer to Mucianus. So, we have to go all the way to here to get the verb. Okay, so he placed Agricola, okay, as leader, praeposuit. He made him leader of the 20th Legion. Okay, so this is our main frame, of accusative direct object, dative indirect object, and praeposuit. And the dative is actually, it's not it. The praeposuit, the pri triggers the dative. He placed him at the head of the 20th Legion. Okay, but we have these more complex. These two accusative modifiers of agriculum. So agriculum, having been sent, de electus agendos, and again we have the ad with the accusative of a gerundive after a verb of sending, having been sent to register recruit troops, and having versatum integreque ad strinue, having done so, having carried out that matter with integrity and energy. Okay, he didn't allow people to beg off or get excused from service. Okay, on the basis of that, he was placed at the head of the 20th Legion, and now we're going to get a modification of the 20th Legion, which is going to be this dative participial clause. Okay, transgressi ad sacramentum tarde. Tarde ad sacramentum transgressi. And the sacramentum was just the vow of allegiance to the emperor. So they hadn't, or in this case to Vespasian, they hadn't immediately sworn to their allegiance to Vespasian, but had done so after the fact. They'd come slowly to take up Vespasian's cause. So Agricola sent out to them kind of this shaky legion. And then he supplies ubi discessor setiose agere narabatur, where the previous commander, Narabatur, had been said seditiose agere, to have behaved in a seditious manner, to have kind of been playing his cards. Maybe he was leaning towards one of the other contenders to be emperor. Okay, and then quipe, and I inserted this in, quipe in Tacitus really means nothing more than nm. For quipe, and legatis quoque consularibus nemia ac forme dolosa erant, for indeed the army, you have to supply the army, was too much to handle and fearsome, okay, both to the consular legates, so the higher officials, and neither was the legatus praetorius ad cohibendas potens, nor was he capable enough to control them. So here we're just these whole phrases are just describing, the personalities that have been involved in the failure of this military, and the shakiness of this military group before Agricola took over. Okay, so quipe legatis quoque consularibus nimia ac forme dolosa erant, nec legatus praetorius ad cohibendum potens. Okay, so we have so the legatis consularibus were the governors of the major imperial provinces containing 2 or more legions, and were always of consular rank. And they had consular rank because that put them above the Praetorian legate, who were of lower rank. And so the Praetorian legate, the legatus praetorius, Ogilvy tells us, was the commanding officer of the legion, and he was regularly one who had been or was qualified to be a praetor. So, the army, the legion itself was too much and fearful for the consular legates, and it was too much to handle, or should I say, their immediate commander, the legatus praetorius, was not capable of ad cohibendum, to bring them to heel. Okay. Incertum suo an militium ingenio. Now this is one of Tacitus's just typical tag on. Incertum, and you have to say, incertum erat. It was uncertain whether because of his own or because of the soldiers, because of his own character or that of the soldiers. So it's not uncommon that forms of a reflexive possessive will be paralleled with genitives of possessions, because the reflexive, of course, agrees with the noun, but if you're going to have a secondary modifier, it generally will go in the genitive of possession. So it was uncertain whether this ill behavior was a function of the commander's character or the character of the soldiers. Incertum suo an militum ingenio. Typical curt Tacitian phrase. Okay. So ita, and so, successor simul et utor electus, so and so, having been chosen, or as both, the one who was going to take over command and as someone who was going to utor, strong word, literally avenger, someone who was going to clean up the situation by being a disciplinarian. Okay. Rarissima moderatione. Here we got an ablative of manner, with a moderation that is most rare. Okay. Agricola maluit. He preferred to appear to have found bonus melites, you almost have to say, to have found the soldiers good than to have made them good. So rather than cracking the whip hard and making a show of enforcing discipline on these troops that had, been slow to come to rally to Vespasian's cause, he preferred to make it look like, oh, you know, the soldiers are okay, they just need a little guidance. So instead of getting credit, you know, this credit that would have come just from being an autor, he, I'm sure he inflicted justice, you know, on the ringleaders and this and that, if there were any. But the end effect of this first service was that Agricola preferred to appear to have found good rather than to have made the soldiers good, to have found them good than to have made them. So he accentuated their virtues as opposed to whatever failings they might have had. So let's just read over this last little bit as a whole, and then we'll end for today. Okay. Sequens annus gravi vonera animum domumque eius adflixet. Nam classis Ortoniana licenter vaga dum intimilos Liguria pars est hostiliter populatur matrum agricola in praediis suis interfecit. Praediaque ipsa et magnam patrimonii partem diripuit quae causa caedis fuerat. Igiter ad solemnia pietatis profectus Agricola nutio ad fectati ad Vespasiano imperii deprehensus ac statum in partis transgressus est. Initia principatus ac statum urbis Mucianus regebat, juvene ad motem Domitiano et ex patera fortuna tantem licentiam usurpantem. Is misum ad delectus agendos agricolum integreque ad strinue versatum, vicissime legioni tarde ad sacramentum transgressae praeposuit, ubi decessor seditiose agere narrabatur. Quippe legatis quoque consularibus nimia ac formidolosa erat, nec legatus praetorius ad cohibendum potens, incertum suo a militium ingenio. Ita successor simul et utor electus, rarissima moderatione, maluit videri juvenice bonos quam fecisse. Okay, so we will continue live this treatment of the Agricola and cover, I believe, we hope, chapters 8 through 12 this coming Wednesday. If you have any additional questions or comments or corrections to our treatment, please do feel free to put them in the notes to this YouTube presentation. And I hope you'll join us for Detroit Greek and Latin's subsequent treatments of more complex works of Latin literature. Okay, so thank you very much for joining in, and I hope to, yes, thank you very much for joining in, and I hope to see you this coming Wednesday, as we hope that these broadcasts will occur live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. And that in time will accumulate quite a few works for Latinists as an aid to Latinists who are trying to work on this at home and alone. Okay, thank you for watching, and I look forward to your comments. Wale.